My ex-daughter-in-law called me and said, "George, I want to take little Danny on a special vacation. Just the two of us. We'll be gone for 2 weeks." But when I accidentally discovered what she'd really been planning behind my back, I realized this wasn't about vacation at all. What I found in her apartment changed everything I thought I knew about the woman who used to be part of our family. At 67 years old, I thought I'd seen every kind of family drama life could throw at me. My wife Carol had passed away 4 years ago, leaving me to navigate the complicated relationships that come with divorce, custody battles, and blended families. But nothing could have prepared me for discovering that Amanda, my son's ex-wife, was planning to kidnap my 7-year-old grandson and disappear forever. My name is George Martinez, and this is the story of how I saved my grandson from a woman who was willing to destroy a child's life to satisfy her need for revenge. The nightmare began 6 months ago, right after my son Michael's divorce from Amanda was finalized. It had been a bitter, ugly split that lasted nearly 2 years and cost both sides tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees. Michael had caught Amanda having an affair with her personal trainer, a discovery that shattered not just their marriage, but our entire family's trust in her. During the divorce proceedings, Amanda had fought viciously for full custody of Danny, claiming that Michael was an unfit father who worked too much and drank too much. None of it was true, but she'd hired an expensive lawyer who specialized in character assassination. In the end, the court awarded joint custody, with Danny spending weekdays with Michael and weekends with Amanda. I thought that would be the end of the drama. I was wrong. Amanda had always been manipulative, but after the divorce her behavior became increasingly erratic. She would show up late to pick up Danny, sometimes not at all, leaving my grandson waiting by the window for a mother who never came. When she did take him, she'd return him early, claiming she had important things to do that couldn't wait. But the most disturbing change was how she talked about Michael and our family in front of Danny. My grandson, who used to be a happy, outgoing child, became quiet and withdrawn. He started asking questions that no 7-year-old should have to ask. "Grandpa," Danny said to me one afternoon while we worked on a puzzle together, "is it true that Daddy doesn't love me anymore?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. "Of course not, buddy. Your daddy loves you more than anything in the world." "Why would you think that?" "Mommy says Daddy only visits me because the judge makes him. She says if the judge didn't make him, he'd never come see me at all." I knelt down to Danny's eye level, looking into his serious brown eyes that were far too worried for a child his age. "Danny, your mommy is wrong about that. Your daddy visits you because he loves you and wants to spend time with you. He's loved you since the day you were born. Then why did he leave us? Sometimes grown-ups can't live together anymore, but that doesn't mean they stop loving their children. Your daddy didn't leave you, Danny. He left your mommy because they couldn't be married anymore. There's a big difference, but the damage was already being done." Week after week, Amanda filled Danny's head with poison about his father, about our family, about the divorce. She told him that Michael had chosen work over family, that I didn't really care about him, that the only person who truly loved him was her. The breaking point came 3 months ago during one of Danny's weekend visits with me. He'd been unusually quiet all day, picking at his food and showing no interest in the activities we usually enjoyed together. "What's wrong, buddy?" I asked as we sat on my back porch watching the sunset. Danny was quiet for a long time, then said in a small voice, "Mommy says we might have to move away." "Move away? Where?" "She says maybe to California, where her sister lives. She says it would be better for both of us to start fresh somewhere new. California, 3,000 miles away from Michael, from me, from everything Danny had ever known. Did your mommy say when this might happen?" "She says maybe soon. She says Daddy and you try to control her, and she needs to be free to make her own choices about our life." I felt a cold knot forming in my stomach. Amanda wasn't just talking about moving. She was preparing Danny for the idea that they might disappear, framing it as an escape from people who were trying to control them. That night, after I'd dropped Danny back at Amanda's apartment, I called Michael. "Son, we need to talk. Amanda is planning something and it's not good." Michael came over within an hour, and I told him about Danny's comments regarding moving to California. Michael's face went white as I repeated our grandson's words. "She can't just move to California," Michael said. "The custody agreement specifically states that neither parent can relocate more than 50 miles without court approval." Since when has Amanda cared about court orders? She's 3 months behind on returning Danny's clothes. She's consistently late for pickups. And she's been filling that boy's head with lies about you for months. Michael ran his hands through his hair, a gesture he'd inherited from me. What do you think she's planning? I think she's going to run, take Danny and disappear somewhere we'll never find them. She wouldn't do that, would she? I looked at my son, this good man who still wanted to believe the best about the woman who'd betrayed him, and felt my heart break a little. Michael, Amanda has shown us exactly who she is over the past year. She's vindictive, she's manipulative, and she's willing to use Danny as a weapon against you. If she thinks running away is the best way to hurt you, she'll do it. But she loves Danny. She wouldn't put him through that kind of trauma. She's already putting him through trauma by poisoning him against his father. Taking him away from everyone he knows would just be the final step. We spent the next 2 hours discussing what to do. Michael wanted to confront Amanda directly, to ask her about her plans and try to reason with her. I convinced him that would be a mistake. If Amanda was planning to run, confronting her would only make her accelerate her timeline. Instead, we decided to watch and wait, to document any suspicious behavior, and be ready to act if our fears proved correct. We didn't have to wait long. 2 weeks later, Danny mentioned during one of our Saturday visits that his mother had been cleaning out their apartment, getting rid of things they didn't need anymore. What kind of things? I asked casually. Furniture and stuff. She sold the big TV and the couch. She said we're going to get new things when we move to our new home. New home. Amanda was preparing for a major relocation, liquidating assets that would be difficult to transport. The next week, Danny told me his mother had enrolled him in online school for the rest of the year. She says regular school is too stressful for me right now, and online school will be better. Online school. The perfect solution for a child who might need to suddenly relocate without worrying about transferring school records. But the most alarming development came during Danny's visit the following Saturday. He was unusually excited about something, bouncing around my living room like he had important news to share. Grandpa, Mommy says we're going to take a special vacation soon. That sounds fun, buddy. Where are you going? Somewhere really far away. She says it's a surprise, but we're going to fly on an airplane and we'll get to see lots of new places. How long will you be gone? Danny's face scrunched up as he tried to remember. She said maybe a long time. Maybe forever if we really like it there. Forever. Amanda was preparing Danny for the idea that this vacation might be permanent. Does your daddy know about this vacation? Danny shook his head. Mommy says it's a secret surprise. She says Daddy might try to stop us if he knows, because he doesn't want us to have fun without him. Another lie designed to drive a wedge between Danny and his father, this time with the added benefit of ensuring the boy wouldn't accidentally reveal Amanda's plans. That evening, I called Michael immediately. She's definitely planning to run, I told him. She's liquidating assets. She's put Danny in online school, and now she's telling him they're going on a vacation that might last forever. We have to do something, Michael said, panic creeping into his voice. If she takes him out of state, we might never get him back. I know. But we need evidence, not just suspicions. We need proof of what she's planning. How do we get proof? That's when I made a decision that would change everything. Leave that to me, son. Your grandfather has a few tricks Amanda doesn't know about. The next Monday, while Amanda was at work and Danny was at school, I did something I'd never thought I'd have to do. I used the key Michael still had to. Amanda's apartment, she'd never bothered, to change the locks and conducted a careful search of her home. What I found confirmed our worst fears and revealed something even more sinister than simple kidnapping. Hidden in Amanda's bedroom closet, I discovered a folder containing plane tickets to Los Angeles, rental car reservations and apartment listings in California. But that wasn't the most shocking discovery. Also in the folder were documents that made my blood run cold. A new birth certificate for Danny with Amanda, listed as his only parent. A fake social security card. And most disturbing of all, research about how to legally change a child's name without the other parent's consent. Amanda wasn't just planning to kidnap Danny. She was planning to steal his identity, to erase any trace of his father, his grandfather, his entire life up to that point. But there was more. Bank statements showing Amanda had been systematically emptying her accounts, converting everything to cash, applications for new credit cards under slightly altered names, and a handwritten note that made my hands shake as I read it. Danny will understand someday that I did this to protect him from a family that never deserved him. By the time they realize we're gone, we'll be too far away for them to ever find us. New names, new life, new beginning. He'll thank me when he's older. I photographed everything with my phone, then carefully returned the documents to their hiding place. Amanda couldn't know I'd been there. Not yet. That evening, I called an emergency meeting with Michael and our family lawyer, Patricia Hawkins. Patricia had handled Michael's divorce and knew all the players involved. "This is kidnapping," Patricia said after reviewing the photos I'd taken. "Not just custodial interference, but actual kidnapping with intent to permanently deprive the father of access to his child." "What can we do?" Michael asked. "We can get an emergency court order preventing Amanda from taking Danny out of state. But we need to act fast. Based on these documents, she could be planning to leave any day now." "How fast?" I asked. "I can file the paperwork first thing tomorrow morning." "We should have a hearing by Wednesday. What if she runs before then?" Patricia was quiet for a moment. "Then we call the FBI. This would become a federal kidnapping case." The next morning, Patricia filed for an emergency restraining order that would prevent Amanda from taking Danny more than 25 miles from his current address. But as we waited for the hearing, Amanda made her move. On Tuesday evening, she called me with barely contained excitement in her voice. "George, I have wonderful news. I've decided to take Danny on that special vacation I mentioned. We're leaving Thursday morning. 2 days before our court hearing." "That sounds lovely, Amanda. Where are you planning to go?" "Oh, it's a surprise. Somewhere Danny has always wanted to see. We'll be gone for about 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Just long enough to establish residency in California and file for sole custody in a state where Michael would have no legal standing. Does Michael know about this trip?" Amanda's voice hardened slightly. "Michael doesn't need to know every detail of my time with Danny. The custody agreement gives me the right to take him on vacation." "Of course. I just thought as his father, he might want to know where his son is. Danny and I need this time together, George. I hope you understand." "I understand perfectly, Amanda, and I did understand. I understood that in less than 48 hours, Amanda was planning to steal my grandson and disappear forever. But Amanda had made one critical mistake. She'd told me about her plan, thinking I was just a harmless old grandfather who wouldn't interfere with her scheme. She was about to learn that this grandfather would do anything to protect his grandson. The war for Danny's future was about to begin. Wednesday morning arrived with the kind of grey, overcast sky that seemed to match the dread I felt in my chest. Amanda was planning to take Danny and disappear in less than 24 hours, and despite all our legal preparations, I knew that once she got on that plane, we might never see my grandson again. Patricia had filed the emergency restraining order, but the hearing wasn't scheduled until Friday morning, a full day after Amanda's planned departure. The system that was supposed to protect children was about to fail my grandson, because bureaucracy moves slower than a desperate woman with a plane ticket. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't stop thinking about Danny asking me why his daddy didn't love him anymore. That innocent 7-year-old boy had no idea his mother was planning to steal his entire life, to erase his father and grandfather from his memory and replace them with lies. At 6 a.m., I made a decision that would either save my grandson or land me in jail. I was going to conduct one more search of Amanda's apartment, this time looking for her exact travel plans. If I could find flight information, departure times, destinations, anything that would help us intercept her before she disappeared with Danny. Michael had begged me not to take such risks. "Dad, if she catches you in her apartment, she'll call the police. You could be arrested for breaking and entering. Son, if we don't stop her today, Danny will be gone forever. I'd rather spend a few nights in jail than spend the rest of my life wondering what happened to my grandson." At 8 a.m., I parked 3 blocks away from Amanda's apartment complex and walked casually through the parking lot, noting that her silver Honda was gone. She'd be at work until at least 5 p.m., and Danny would be at his online school session until noon. I had a 4-hour window to find what I needed. Using Michael's key, I slipped into the apartment that had once felt like a second home during happier times. Now it felt like enemy territory, a place where my grandson's future was being stolen one lie at a time. The apartment looked different from my previous visit 2 weeks ago. More empty, more temporary. Amanda had clearly accelerated her timeline, removing even more belongings and reducing their possessions to only the essentials. I started with her bedroom, searching more thoroughly than I had before. The folder I'd photographed was still there, but now it contained additional documents that made my hands shake as I read them. A detailed itinerary for their trip. Flight departure at 11:30 a.m. Thursday morning, arriving in Los Angeles at 2:15 p.m. Pacific Time. A rental car reservation at LAX. An address for a furnished apartment in Riverside, California, about 60 miles east of Los Angeles, far enough from the city to avoid detection, close enough to disappear into suburban anonymity. But there was more, much more. Amanda had been planning this for months, maybe even years. I found bank statements showing systematic transfers of money into an account under a different name. Amy Johnson, the identity she planned to use in California. She'd been slowly converting their entire life into liquid assets, selling jewelry, electronics, even Danny's toys, and funneling the money into accounts Michael knew nothing about. Most disturbing of all were the psychological preparation materials. Amanda had been researching how to help children adjust to new identities, how to deal with a child, asking about their previous life and how to gradually replace old memories with new ones. She'd printed articles about something called parental alienation therapy techniques, designed to help children reject one parent in favor of another. The margins were filled with her handwriting, notes about which techniques worked best on Danny, make him understand that Daddy chose work over family, reinforce that Grandpa is too old to really care about children, create new happy memories to replace old ones. Eventually, he won't even ask about them anymore. I sat on Amanda's bedroom floor, surrounded by evidence of the most calculated child abuse I'd ever encountered, and felt sick to my stomach. This wasn't an impulsive decision by a desperate mother. This was a years-long campaign to psychologically destroy a child's relationship with half his family. But the worst discovery was yet to come. Hidden behind a loose baseboard in Amanda's closet, I found a small notebook filled with her handwriting. It was like reading the diary of a madwoman, full of rantings about Michael, about me, about our entire family. Danny belongs to me. I carried him for 9 months. I gave birth to him. I've been his primary caregiver since day one. Michael was never a real father anyway, just a paycheck. And George thinks he can play grandpa. But he's just a lonely old man trying to relive his glory days through someone else's child. They think they won because the court gave Michael joint custody, but they don't understand that possession is 9/10 of the law. Once I have Danny in California, once we start our new life as Amy and Daniel Johnson, there will be no way for them to find us. I've researched the law. If they can't serve me with papers, they can't enforce their custody orders. Danny will understand someday. When he's older, when he realizes how much I sacrificed to protect him from that toxic family, he'll thank me. He'll understand that everything I did was out of love. Love. Amanda called this systematic child abuse love, but the final entry in the notebook, dated just 3 days ago, revealed something that made my blood run cold. Danny has been asking too many questions about the vacation. He wanted to know if he could call Daddy from California, if we'd come back for Christmas, if Grandpa would be sad if we moved away. He's not ready yet. I may have to sedate him for the flight to make sure he doesn't cause problems at the airport. Sedate him. Amanda was planning to drug my 7-year-old grandson to make him compliant during their escape. I photographed every document, every page of the notebook, every piece of evidence I could find. Then I searched the rest of the apartment, looking for more details about their escape plan. In the kitchen, I found a small bottle of children's liquid Benadryl, along with a printed article about safe dosages for air travel anxiety in children. Amanda had researched exactly how much medication would keep Danny docile without causing obvious medical distress. In Danny's room, I found something that broke my heart even further. A small suitcase already packed, containing only a few changes of clothes and none of his favorite toys. His beloved stuffed elephant, The one he'd had since he was a baby was sitting on the shelf, left behind like everything else from his previous life. But tucked under his pillow, I found a drawing that gave me hope. It was a crayon picture of 3 stick figures labeled me, Daddy, and Grandpa George. We were standing in front of a house with a big tree. Hand Danny had drawn hearts floating around all our heads. At the bottom, in his careful 7-year-old handwriting, he'd written, "I love my family." This was what Amanda was planning to destroy. Not just a custody arrangement or a legal technicality, but a child's love for the people who'd been part of his life since birth. I carefully photographed the drawing and returned it to its hiding place under Danny's pillow. Whatever happened in the next 24 hours, I wanted my grandson to know that his real family had fought for him. By 11 a.m., I documented everything I could find. The evidence was overwhelming, not just of planned kidnapping, but of systematic child abuse, identity fraud, and psychological manipulation. Patricia would have more than enough to convince any judge that Danny was in immediate danger. But as I prepared to leave the apartment, I made one final discovery that changed everything. On Amanda's computer, which she'd left open on the kitchen table, I found an email thread that revealed the true scope of her plan. She hadn't been working alone. The emails were between Amanda and her sister Karen in California, the woman who was supposedly unaware of Amanda's plans. But according to their correspondence, Karen had been an active participant from the beginning. "The apartment in Riverside is perfect," Karen had written. "Small complex, lots of transient residents, management doesn't ask too many questions. I've already established Amy Johnson as a legitimate identity, driver's license, utility accounts, even a job history. By the time you get here with Danny, you'll be able to blend right in." "What about school records for Daniel?" Amanda had replied. "I can't enroll him without his previous school transcripts. I've got a contact at the district office. For the right price, she can create a complete educational history for Daniel Johnson. As far as the California system will know, he's been homeschooled in Nevada for the past 2 years. No one will think to look for Danny Martinez. A complete identity theft operation involving multiple people across state lines. This wasn't just kidnapping, it was organized crime. But the most chilling email was the most recent one sent just yesterday. "Amanda, I've been thinking about what you said regarding Danny asking questions about his father. Maybe it would be easier if you told him his father died in an accident. That way he'd stop asking about going back to visit. Grief is easier for children to process than abandonment." Amanda's response made my hands shake. "I've considered that, but what if he tries to look up obituaries online when he's older? Better to let him gradually forget. I've been telling him that Daddy and Grandpa don't call because they're busy with their own lives. Eventually he'll stop expecting to hear from them." I stared at the computer screen, reading about 2 women casually discussing how to psychologically destroy a child's relationship with his father and grandfather. They were talking about Danny like he was a possession to be moved and manipulated, not a human being with his own feelings and needs. I quickly forwarded all the emails to my own account, then cleared the browser history so Amanda wouldn't know I'd seen them. By noon, I was out of the apartment and driving home, my phone full of evidence that would hopefully save my grandson's life. The moment I got home, I called Patricia and Michael for an emergency meeting. Within an hour, we were all sitting in Patricia's office, reviewing the evidence I'd gathered. "This changes everything," Patricia said after examining the photos and emails. "This isn't just custodial interference anymore. This is federal kidnapping with conspiracy across state lines. The FBI will definitely want to see this. Can we stop her before she leaves tomorrow?" Michael asked, his face pale with worry. "We can do better than that," Patricia replied. "With this evidence, I can get an emergency order, allowing us to take Danny into protective custody immediately. We don't have to wait for Amanda to make her move." "What does that mean exactly?" "It means we can have Danny removed from Amanda's custody today, right now, before she has a chance to drug him and put him on that plane." Michael looked confused. "But how?" "She picks him up from school in 2 hours. Patricia smiled grimly. "She won't be picking him up today. By the time Amanda gets to Danny's school, he'll already be safe with his father." "Is that legal?" "With this evidence, not only is it legal, it's mandatory. The court has a duty to protect children from immediate harm, and Amanda's plans clearly constitute immediate harm." An hour later, Patricia had obtained an emergency protective order from Judge Harrison, the same judge who'd handled Michael's divorce. Armed with the order and accompanied by a social worker and 2 police officers, we went to Danny's school to collect my grandson before Amanda could execute her kidnapping plan. Danny was confused when he was called out of his online session and found his father, grandfather, and several official-looking adults waiting in the principal's office. "Daddy." "Grandpa, what's happening?" he asked, his big brown eyes wide with concern. Michael knelt down to Danny's level and spoke gently. "Danny, we need you to come with us right now. There's been a problem and we need to make sure you're safe." "What kind of problem? Where's Mommy?" I could see the social worker watching our interaction carefully, evaluating how much Danny knew about his mother's plans. "We'll explain everything soon, buddy," I said, taking his small hand. "Right now we just need you to come with us." Danny looked around at all the serious faces surrounding him and seemed to sense that something major was happening. But he trusted us enough to follow without argument, even when the principal explained that he wouldn't be going home with his mother that afternoon. As we drove away from the school, I looked in the rearview mirror at my grandson, safely buckled into his car seat. Completely unaware of how close he'd come to being stolen from everyone who loved him. In less than 4 hours, Amanda would arrive at his school expecting to pick him up for their special vacation. Instead, she'd find police officers waiting with an arrest warrant. The first phase of our battle to save Danny was complete, but I knew the war was far from over. At exactly 3:15 p.m., Amanda's silver Honda pulled into the school parking lot. Through the window of the principal's office, I watched her step out of the car with the confident stride of a woman who thought she was about to pull off the perfect crime. She had no idea that her son was already safe with his father, or that 2 police officers were waiting inside the building with an arrest warrant. Detective Sarah Collins and Officer Martinez had positioned themselves strategically in the main hallway, just out of sight from the entrance, but close enough to intercept Amanda the moment she walked through the doors. Patricia, Michael, and I watched from the principal's office as Amanda approached the school building, checking her watch and adjusting her purse strap. Small gestures that revealed her nervousness, despite her outward composure. "Remember," Detective Collins had told us during the briefing, "let her make the first move. We want to catch her in the act of attempting to take the child for her planned kidnapping. That will make the charges stick better than just conspiracy." Amanda entered the school and walked directly to the main office, where Mrs. Henderson, the secretary, greeted her with a neutral expression. "I'm here to pick up Danny Martinez," Amanda said, her voice carrying that forced cheerfulness I'd learned to recognize as her manipulation mode. "I'm sorry." "Mrs. Martinez," Mrs. Henderson replied carefully, "but Danny isn't available for pickup today." Amanda's confident expression faltered. "What do you mean he's not available?" "I'm his mother. I have a right to pick up my son. You'll need to speak with Principal Johnson about that." Amanda's voice grew sharper. "Where is my son?" That was the cue Detective Collins had been waiting for. She stepped into the office, her badge clearly visible. "Mrs. Amanda Martinez, I'm Detective Collins with the County Sheriff's Department. I need to speak with you about your travel plans with Daniel Martinez." Amanda's face went through a series of rapid changes: confusion, recognition, and then panic. "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just here to pick up my son for a routine visit." "Ma'am, we have evidence that you've been planning to take Daniel out of state in violation of your custody agreement, with the intent to permanently deprive his father of contact with the child." "That's ridiculous. Danny and I are going on vacation." "There's nothing illegal about that." Detective Collins pulled out a folder containing copies of the evidence I'd gathered. "Ma'am, we have documentation of your flight reservations to Los Angeles, your apartment rental in California, and your correspondence with Karen Johnson regarding creating false identities for you and your son." Amanda's composure cracked completely. "You've been spying on me. You went through my personal belongings?" "We have a warrant, Mrs. Martinez, and we have probable cause to believe you were planning to kidnap your child." "Kidnap?" "He's my son. I can take him anywhere I want, not without the other parent's consent, and not with the intent to permanently relocate using false identities." Amanda looked around frantically, as if searching for an escape route. "Where is Danny?" "I want to see my son right now. Daniel is safe with his father. Detective Collins said calmly. "Mrs. Martinez, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit kidnapping, child endangerment, and identity fraud." As Officer Martinez read Amanda her rights, she began screaming accusations at everyone within earshot. "This is all George's fault. That old man has been trying to destroy my relationship with my son from day one. He's the one who's been spying on me, violating my privacy." She turned toward the principal's office window, where she could see me standing with Michael and Patricia. "You did this," she shouted at me. "You manipulative old bastard. You turned my own son against me, and now you're trying to steal my child." Detective Collins guided Amanda toward the door, but she continued screaming over her shoulder. "Danny doesn't need you people. He doesn't need a father who works all the time, and a grandfather who's just counting down the days until he dies. I'm the only one who really loves him." The words were meant to hurt, but all I felt was sadness for this woman, who'd convinced herself that destroying a child's relationship with his family was an act of love. As Amanda was led away in handcuffs, screaming threats and accusations, I thought about Danny sitting safely in my living room, working on a puzzle with his father. That little boy had no idea how close he'd come to losing everything he'd ever known. 3 hours later, we were all gathered in Patricia's office for an emergency conference call with FBI agent Rebecca Martinez, no relation to Officer Martinez from the school. The federal authorities had taken over the case once they learned about the interstate conspiracy and identity fraud. "Mr. George Martinez," Agent Martinez said through the speakerphone, "I want to commend you for the evidence you gathered. Without your investigation, we might never have caught this before it was too late." "I just did what any grandfather would do to protect his grandson," I replied. "Actually, sir, what you did went far beyond that. This was a sophisticated criminal operation involving multiple conspirators across state lines. Amanda Martinez and her sister Karen Johnson have been running this type of scheme for years." That revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. "What do you mean, years?" "We've been investigating Karen Johnson for fraudulent identity creation, but we never connected her to child custody cases. Based on the evidence you provided, we were able to search her residence in California. We found materials suggesting she's helped at least 3 other women steal their children and create new identities." Michael spoke up. "So Amanda wasn't just planning to hurt our family. She was part of a criminal organization." "That's correct. And your son Daniel would have been the 4th child to disappear into this network. Once they established new identities in California, they typically move the children every few years, making it nearly impossible for the other parent to track them down. The scope of what Amanda had planned was even worse than I'd imagined. Danny wouldn't have just lost contact with his father and grandfather. He would have been moved around like a piece in a chess game, his entire identity erased and recreated repeatedly to avoid detection." "What happens now?" I asked. "Amanda Martinez is facing federal charges for conspiracy to commit kidnapping, wire fraud, identity theft, and child endangerment. Karen Johnson was arrested this morning in California and is facing similar charges, plus additional counts related to the other children she's helped disappear. Will they go to prison? If convicted, they're looking at 15 to 20 years each. The federal government takes child trafficking very seriously, even when it's disguised as custody disputes. Child trafficking. That's what Amanda's love for Danny actually was." Agent Martinez continued, "Mr. Michael Martinez, you'll need to work with social services to ensure Daniel receives appropriate counseling. Children who've been prepared for this type of abduction often suffer from psychological manipulation that can take time to overcome." Over the next several days, the full extent of Amanda's scheme became clear. FBI searches of her financial records revealed she'd been planning this for over 2 years, slowly liquidating assets and creating false documentation. The vacation story had been carefully crafted to make Danny compliant during the abduction, while the gradual alienation from Michael and me was designed to make him less likely to resist, leaving us behind. Most disturbing was the discovery that Amanda had been secretly recording Danny's conversations with Michael and me, looking for statements she could use to justify her actions. She'd twisted innocent comments about work, stress, or my health concerns into evidence that we didn't really care about Danny's well-being. The notebooks I'd found in her apartment contained detailed psychological profiles of Danny, documenting which manipulation techniques worked best on him and how quickly he could be made to accept new truths about his family. But the most heartbreaking discovery was a video Amanda had made, apparently intended to be shown to Danny after they'd established their new lives in California. In it, she explained how his father and grandfather had given up on him, how they'd decided he was too much trouble to maintain contact with. Daddy and Grandpa George love their own lives more than they love you, Amanda said in the video. That's why they didn't try to find us. They're happier without having to worry about a little boy who needs so much attention. It was a masterpiece of psychological abuse, designed to convince a 7-year-old child that his family's love was conditional and that he'd somehow failed to meet their expectations. When Danny's court-appointed therapist, Sir Jennifer Walsh, showed us the video, Michael broke down completely. How could she do that to him? He sobbed. How could she plan to destroy his relationship with everyone who loves him? Dr. Walsh, a specialist in parental alienation and child psychology, explained that Amanda's behavior wasn't uncommon in high-conflict custody situations. Some parents become so focused on winning against their ex-spouse that they lose sight of what's best for the child, she said. Amanda convinced herself that taking Danny away from you was protecting him, but what she was actually doing was preparing to traumatize him for life. Will Danny be okay? Children are remarkably resilient. Danny is young enough that the damage isn't permanent, especially since you caught this before Amanda could execute her plan. But he'll need ongoing therapy to help him process what happened and rebuild his trust in family relationships. The hardest part was explaining to Danny what had really been happening. In age-appropriate terms, Dr. Walsh helped us tell him that his mother had made some very bad choices, that she'd planned to take him away from his father and grandfather forever, and that this wasn't his fault. Danny's reaction was heartbreaking and hopeful at the same time. I knew Mummy was lying about some things, he said during one of our therapy sessions. She kept telling me that Daddy didn't want to see me anymore, but Daddy always seemed happy when I came to visit. How did that make you feel when Mommy said those things? Dr. Walsh asked, confused, because Daddy never acted like he didn't want me around. And Grandpa George always made cookies when I came over, so I thought maybe he liked having me visit. Out of the mouths of babes. Despite months of psychological manipulation, Danny's 7-year-old instincts had told him that the people who showed him love through actions were more trustworthy than the person who claimed to love him while filling his head with poison. 2 weeks after Amanda's arrest, we received news that would change everything. Karen Johnson, faced with overwhelming evidence and the prospect of decades in federal prison, had agreed to cooperate with authorities in exchange for a reduced sentence. Her confession revealed the locations of 3 other children who'd been stolen from their fathers through similar schemes. All 3 were found and reunited with their families, some after being missing for over 2 years. Your grandson's case broke open an entire network of child traffickers, Agent Martinez told us during our final interview. The evidence you gathered didn't just save Daniel, it saved those other children too. 1 month after Amanda's arrest, Michael received full custody of Danny, with Amanda's parental rights suspended pending the outcome of her criminal trial. She would have supervised visitation rights only after completing court-mandated psychological counseling, and only if Danny expressed a desire to maintain contact with her. Do you want to see Mommy again? Dr. Walsh had asked Danny during one of their sessions. Danny thought about it for a long time before answering. Maybe when I'm older. Right now, I just want to stay with Daddy and Grandpa George. The night before Amanda's trial began, I sat on my back porch watching Danny and Michael throw a baseball in the yard. My grandson was laughing, really laughing, in a way I hadn't heard in months. The drawn, anxious expression he'd worn during Amanda's manipulation campaign was gone, replaced by the carefree joy that should define childhood. Grandpa, Danny called out, running toward me with the baseball in his small hands. Want to play catch with us? I'd love to, buddy. As I stood up to join them, Danny hugged me tightly around the waist. Grandpa, I'm glad you didn't let Mommy take me on that vacation. Me too, Danny, me too. 3 days later, Amanda Martinez was convicted on all federal charges and sentenced to 18 years in prison. Karen Johnson received 15 years for her cooperation. The judge called it one of the most callous examples of child exploitation disguised as parental love he'd ever seen. Danny didn't attend the trial. He was too busy being a 7-year-old boy, playing in his grandfather's backyard, secure in the knowledge that the people who loved him would never let anyone steal him away. The war for my grandson's future was over, and love had won. 1 year after Amanda's conviction, I stood in my kitchen making chocolate chip cookies, while Danny sat at the table working on his math homework. The scene was so beautifully ordinary, so perfectly normal that it still took my breath away sometimes. There were moments when I had to remind myself that this wasn't a dream, that my grandson was really here, safe and happy, and that the nightmare of almost losing him was truly over. "Grandpa George," Danny said, looking up from his worksheet, "can you help me with this word problem?" "Of course, buddy." "What's it about?" "It says Sarah has 24 stickers. She gives away 8 stickers to her friends. How many stickers does Sarah have left?" I sat down beside him, watching as he carefully worked through the problem. At 8 years old, Danny had grown taller. His face had lost some of its baby roundness, but his eyes still held that same bright curiosity that had captivated me from the day he was born. "So if Sarah starts with 24 and gives away 8, what do you think?" I asked. Danny counted on his fingers, his tongue poking out slightly in concentration. 24 minus 8 is 16. Exactly right. You're getting really good at math. Dad says maybe I can be an engineer like him when I grow up. You can be anything you want. Danny, the important thing is that you have people who love you and will support whatever you choose. It was a lesson that had taken on profound meaning over the past year. Danny was thriving in ways that amazed everyone who knew him. His teachers reported that he was confident, engaged, and showed no signs of the anxiety and confusion that had marked his behavior during Amanda's manipulation campaign. Dr. Walsh, his therapist, had warned us that children who'd experienced parental alienation often struggled with trust issues, difficulty forming attachments, and confusion about family relationships. But Danny seemed to have emerged from the experience stronger rather than damaged. "I think it helped that he never fully believed Amanda's lies," Dr. Walsh had explained during one of our sessions. His instincts told him that the people who showed him consistent love and care were trustworthy. That foundation of genuine relationship protected him from the worst psychological damage. Michael had also transformed over the past year. The guilt and helplessness he'd felt during Amanda's campaign had been replaced by a fierce determination to be the best father possible. He'd reduced his work hours, started coaching Danny's little league team, and made sure that his son never doubted his priority in his father's life. "Dad," Michael said to me one evening, as we watched Danny play in the backyard, "I can't thank you enough for what you did. If you hadn't discovered Amanda's plan, if you hadn't fought to save him, you don't need to thank me, son. That's what family does. We protect each other. But you went above and beyond. You risked everything to save Danny. I risked nothing compared to what we could have lost." The legal aftermath of Amanda's case had continued long after her conviction. Karen Johnson's cooperation had led to the discovery and dismantling of an entire network of individuals who helped parents steal children and create false identities. 7 adults were ultimately convicted on federal charges, and 4 children were reunited with their families. Agent Martinez had visited us 6 months after the trial to update us on the broader investigation. "Mr. Martinez," she said, "your case was the key that unlocked everything. The evidence you gathered didn't just save your grandson. It exposed a criminal organization that had been operating for over 5 years. What happens to the other children who were found?" I asked. "They're all receiving counseling and working to rebuild relationships with their families. Some of them had been missing for years, so the adjustment process is more complicated than Danny's situation. But children are remarkably resilient when they're given proper support. Amanda herself had become a different person in prison. According to her court-appointed therapist, she'd initially maintained that everything she'd done was motivated by love and a desire to protect Danny from what she perceived as a toxic family environment. But as the months passed and she was forced to confront the reality of her actions, something had shifted. She'd begun to understand that her love had actually been a form of possessiveness, that her desire to protect Danny had really been a need to control him. She's asked about the possibility of writing a letter to Daniel, Patricia had informed us during a recent update, not asking for contact or visitation, but expressing genuine remorse for the damage she caused. Michael and I had discussed this carefully. Danny was doing so well, was so happy and settled, that we didn't want to risk disrupting his progress with reminders of his mother's betrayal. "What does Dr. Walsh think?" Michael had asked. "She believes Danny is emotionally strong enough to handle it if he wants to, but the decision should be entirely his, with no pressure from any of us." When we'd presented the option to Danny, his response had surprised us all. "Is Mommy sorry for lying about you and Grandpa?" he asked. "Yes, buddy. I think she is." Danny thought about it for a long time. "Maybe when I'm older I can read her letter, but right now I just want to be happy with my family." The wisdom of an 8-year-old child. Danny had learned to trust his instincts about what he needed for his own well-being, a lesson that would serve him well for the rest of his life. The ripple effects of Amanda's attempted kidnapping had extended far beyond our immediate family. The case had attracted media attention, leading to new legislation, strengthening penalties for parental kidnapping, and requiring better coordination between state and federal authorities in custody cases. More importantly, it had raised awareness about the psychological manipulation tactics used by some parents in custody disputes. Family courts across the country had begun implementing better training for judges and social workers to recognize signs of parental alienation and take appropriate action to protect children. "Your case has probably prevented dozens of other kidnappings," Patricia had told us. "Courts are now much more alert to the warning signs, and parents who try these tactics are being caught before they can execute their plans." But for me, the most meaningful change was much simpler and more personal. Danny had learned that he could trust the adults in his life to protect him, that love wasn't conditional or manipulative, and that his feelings and instincts mattered. This afternoon, as we worked on his math homework together, Danny suddenly looked up from his worksheet and said something that made my heart swell with pride. "Grandpa, remember when Mommy used to say you didn't really care about me?" "I remember, buddy. I never believed her, you know. Because people who don't care about you don't make cookies every time you visit. They don't help with your homework or teach you how to throw a curveball. How did you know the difference between what Mommy was saying and what was really true?" Danny shrugged with the casual wisdom that children sometimes possess. "I just paid attention to what people did, not just what they said. Actions are louder than words, right?" "Right indeed." That evening, Michael came over for our weekly family dinner, a tradition we'd established after Amanda's arrest. As we sat around my kitchen table, sharing a meal and talking about Danny's school day, his baseball practice, and his plans for the upcoming summer, I reflected on how much our family had been through and how much stronger we'd become. "Dad," Danny said as we were finishing dessert, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you think Mommy will ever understand what she did wrong?" It was a question that showed how much Danny had matured over the past year. He was old enough now to grapple with complex ideas about human behavior, justice, and forgiveness. I hope so. "Danny, sometimes it takes people a long time to understand the difference between love and control. Maybe someday your mommy will figure that out. If she does figure it out, and if she gets out of jail someday, do you think she could be part of our family again?" Michael and I exchanged a look across the table. We'd wondered when Danny might start asking these questions. "That would depend on a lot of things," Michael said carefully. "It would depend on whether she really changed, whether she could prove that she understood she'd made terrible mistakes, and most importantly, whether you wanted her to be part of your life. Would you be okay with that?" Danny asked me directly. I thought about it honestly. If your mother became a person who could be trusted to put your well-being first, if she could prove that she understood the difference between loving someone and controlling them, then yes, I think I could forgive her. But that would be a very big change, and it would take a very long time. Danny nodded solemnly. "I think maybe I'd want to see her again someday, but not until I'm sure she won't try to take me away from you and Dad. You don't have to make that decision now, buddy, and whatever you decide when you're older, we'll support you." 2 hours later, after Michael and Danny had gone home, I sat on my back porch with a cup of coffee watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The past year had taught me things about family, love, and courage that I'd never expected to learn at my age. I'd discovered that sometimes protecting the people you love requires you to become someone you never thought you could be: a spy, an investigator, a fighter willing to risk everything for what matters most. I'd learned that children are far more resilient and intuitive than we give them credit for, that they can often see through lies and manipulation when trusted adults support their instincts. Most importantly, I'd learned that real love, the kind of love that builds families and creates lasting bonds, is demonstrated through actions, not words. It's shown through consistency, reliability, and putting the other person's needs before your own. Amanda had claimed to love Danny, but her version of love was possessive and destructive. She'd been willing to steal his entire identity, to cut him off from half his family, to drug him into compliance, all in the name of that love. Michael and I loved Danny too, but our love was expressed through sacrifice, protection, and giving him the freedom to be himself. We'd been willing to fight for him, but we'd also been willing to let him make age-appropriate choices about his own life. The difference between those two types of love had literally saved my grandson's life. Today, 18 months after Amanda's arrest, Danny is a thriving 9-year-old who plays baseball, excels in school, and has a group of close friends who come over regularly to work on projects in my garage. He's learned to trust his own judgment, to value genuine relationships over manipulation, and to understand that real family members prove their love through their actions. Michael has become the father he always had the potential to be, present and engaged, and completely devoted to his son's happiness. Our relationship too has grown stronger through the crisis we faced together. And me, I've learned that being a grandfather isn't just about spoiling grandchildren and telling stories about the old days. Sometimes it means being willing to fight battles you never expected to fight, to become someone you never expected to become, and to risk everything to protect the people who matter most. If someone had told me 3 years ago that I'd end up conducting surveillance operations, gathering evidence of federal crimes, and helping to expose a child trafficking network, I'd have thought they were crazy. But when someone threatens your family, you discover capabilities you didn't know you had. Danny still asks questions about what happened with his mother, and we answer them honestly in age-appropriate ways. He knows that some adults make very bad choices, that families can be complicated, and that sometimes the people who claim to love you the most can actually hurt you the deepest. But he also knows that there are adults who can be trusted completely, who will never lie to him or use him for their own purposes, who will always put his well-being ahead of their own needs. Last week, Danny brought home a school assignment where he'd been asked to write about someone he admires. His essay was about me, describing me as my grandfather who saved me from the bad people. But what struck me most was his conclusion. My grandpa George taught me that real love means protecting people, not controlling them. He taught me that I can trust my feelings about people, and that grown-ups who really care about kids will listen to what kids need. Most importantly, he taught me that family isn't just about being related to someone. It's about people who choose to take care of each other, no matter what. Out of the mouths of babes, indeed.